Coping with COVID is brought to you by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. Visit scdheck.gov for an updated list of testing sites and important information on how to protect yourself, your family, and friends from the coronavirus. SCDHEC, healthy people, healthy communities. Also, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, helping to meet the needs of small, minority, and women-owned businesses in the City of Columbia. Log on to columbiasc.net/OBO. Agape Counseling and Training Center. Call 803-779-2777 for licensed professionals of counselors and social workers helping families, engaged and married couples, and individuals of all ages gain an understanding of all aspects of their life. If you're having a challenge coping with COVID, contact Agape Counseling and Training Center at agapects.com. And Columbia Housing Authority. The agency is looking for stories from former residents of Allen Benedict Court to retain some of the property's rich history. In its 80-year life, Allen Benedict Court has been home to some of the country's elite, including a Grammy Award-winning performer, corporate executives, national television celebrities, a host of doctors, lawyers, and NBA greats. So share your pictures, mementos, and memories at chcares@chasc.org. Coping with COVID, brought to you by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, Columbia Housing Authority, Agape Counseling and Training Center, and Palmetto Media Connection.
Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor.
Fight the spread and take a stand against coronavirus. Wear a mask in public. Stay at least 6 feet apart from others. And get tested. Join us and fight the spread. Visit scdheck.gov/COVID-19.
Happy Saturday to you. I am Tre Tailor, and you're watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. It's brought to you by SCDHEC, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, Agape Counseling and Training Center. And listen, if you're having some challenges coping with COVID, please contact Agape Counseling and Training Center. Coping with COVID is also brought to you in part by Palmetto Media Connections. Coming up a little later on in the show, I'll tell you about a great event that's going on right after this show via internet at Palmetto Media Connections. But today, we're following up on the top story of the weekend that President Donald Trump and his wife Melania, as we now learn, several other members of the White House and campaign staff have also tested positive for COVID. Now, last night, the president was transported to Walter Reed Hospital. His doctor says it's just for safety measures. He'll remain there for a few days working from the presidential suite. Now, yesterday, Matt Keisner, chair of the Richland County Democratic Party, joined us to talk about what that means for the campaign and the presidency. And today, we are being joined by Edie Rowe Willard, chair of the Richland County GOP, and she's going to give her take. Good morning. Good afternoon, Edie. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Tre. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for agreeing. So, big development in the news that the president and several members, and day by day, we keep hearing more and more people that have been around the president, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which one, have tested positive for COVID. Now, how well can the president govern while hospitalized?
Tre, I think this is something that our founding fathers really took care of when they wrote our Constitution, when they wrote the Bill of Rights, that there are always parts of there are always processes put in place so that this is taken care of. The president is always the president. He doesn't leave the presidency at 5 o'clock when he goes home, or 9 o'clock in the evening whenever he goes home. When he goes on vacation, he's not on vacation. When he's sick, he's always the president.
Right.
So, for example, people talk about the president being on vacation. He changes location. He doesn't change his job. The job always goes with him. So I think he can govern just fine, because he'll have everything and everyone around him that he needs to make the decisions and to govern effectively.
Now, he's canceled many of his upcoming appearances. Do you think this will affect the campaign?
Not really, because, campaigns are always built on a momentum, so that when you get to this point, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of volunteers who are carrying on the campaign. So, and really that's where so much of the the effort and significance is taking place right now is the person-to-person contact, even whether it's over the phone or writing little postcards, knocking on doors with our masks. So much of the campaign is really there. Yes, everyone loves the rallies that he does, but so much of this is now in an army of volunteers. So I think it'll be just fine.
Okay. Now, of course, we all know that our president has been a staunch opposer of masks, although in the last couple of months, he has worn them sometimes. What do you think about this changing his tune about mask wearing?
Well, I think that's actually kind of a misperception. The president has always relied on the advice of doctors and supported everyone wearing masks when doctors, when scientists have told us we need to wear masks. I can say that, yes, a lot of times we see the president without a mask, but that's because usually the people that are interviewing him are well over 6 feet away from him, so he doesn't really need it. But he's always believed in everyone wearing masks and taking responsibility for themselves and making that decision individually to wear a mask, which I think the majority of us do.
Right. Well, I find that interesting that you have yours. I've got mine too, girl. Everywhere. I've got masks everywhere. Everywhere. But I mean, we have seen the president, as recent as in the last debate, lambast Vice President Biden for wearing a mask continually. And he's had several events, campaign events even, where people were not social distancing, where people were not wearing masks when, so I think it's interesting, respectfully, that you say that, he's kind of always been a proponent of masks when it even took a long time before, like I said, even he started wearing masks, or he even encouraged Americans to wear masks and social distance.
Well, and there again, I would say, from the what I have watched on the media and the news, he's always deferred to the scientists and what they say. But again, asking people to take responsibility for themselves and wear masks, there are plenty of places where we cannot social distance.
Yeah.
Or, for example, the peaceful protests, folks were not social distancing there either. But I can tell you at all of those events, several that I've been to, they're taking temperatures. What you don't see is that they're taking temperatures of people before they go in. If somebody has a temperature, they don't go inside, as well as handing out masks and hand sanitizers at the door. So all that is available, and we actually ask everyone to take that before any of those events. For example, I think at the convention night, everyone attending that event had to be tested for COVID first.
Mm-hmm. And that's good to know. Edie Rowe Willard joins us. She's the chair of the Richland County GOP, and we're talking about the implications of President Trump being diagnosed with having COVID and now being hospitalized. And Edie, I know you can't speak for everyone in the GOP, but what is the overall thought about masks and the virus?
Sure. It's an extremely serious virus. And, and everyone that I know that I work with in this state takes it very seriously. They've read up on it everywhere. We have masks. Not only do we have our own masks, but at the office, at our state party headquarters office, everyone wears masks there. They have a box of masks at the desk, as well as hand sanitizer and gloves, so that anyone, if they don't have one, they are welcome to take one that we offer. And so we all take it very seriously. There's a very small minority of folks that are making it political. And unfortunately, I feel like those are the folks that are getting the attention, and that should not be the case. And I've seen kind of on both sides a little bit, but I just think, that's their decision, but our decision is to protect ourselves and our family and friends by wearing masks and social distancing.
Right. Yeah, Tamika Isaac Devine is watching. Thank you so much, Tamika. I appreciate it. She says that she prays for the president, first lady, and everyone infected with COVID. She said a complete and speedy recovery. But she says, really, she hopes people sees this as an example that this is real, and to please be careful for yourself and for others.
And we probably all know someone who has been infected. One of my dear friends was in the hospital 2 months with COVID. He's a bit older, and I've another family. It was interesting. The husband got sick. The wife tested positive. His secretary tested positive, but they never manifested symptoms. And hello, Tamika. I adore Tamika. I would give her a hug right now if we could. But
yes, but you can. Thank you, Tamika, for your question. Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for watching Coping with COVID. Please post and share this information out so we can get the message to the masses. Edie Rowe Willard joins us. I want to ask you one more question before you go, because I know that you're busy and you're out about doing some stuff. But you mentioned that you have a friend that was diagnosed and he was a bit older. Well, the president is 74 years old, and if something happens, God forbid, to President Trump, and he cannot continue to campaign, or if he has to drop out of the race, does the GOP have a plan B?
I think that's something that can happen any presidential cycle. And I know that both our Constitution and our political parties' bylaws, I'm sure both the Democrat and the Republican bylaws, have provisions for that, but I don't think we need to speculate or go there. I know both of our candidates are in their 70s, so I think that's can always be an issue. But again, I don't think we need to speculate or go there right now. The president's report today has been good from what I've seen, that things are looking up. So I think that's all we need to say about that.
Okay, Tamika says she adores you, Edie. But Edie, I think it is something. Look, nobody wants to think about what if someone dies or what if someone gets incapacitated. But the truth of the matter is, this is a debilitating disease, particularly for those with underlying conditions and those that are, elderly. And listen, I'm the first to say, I hate to say 74 is elderly, but it's not young. You have to choose between young and old. I guess it would be old,
the older I get, the younger that seems.
I know. That's why I said I hate to say that, but it's certainly something that the party has got to start thinking about. Hopefully tomorrow, next day, he'll be great. But, at some point, you've got to think, gosh, what do we need to do? And we're 30 days away now from an election. Matt's called this Vote-tober. So, because in many states, people are voting. In South Carolina, we're going to start voting on Monday. So, we've got to, your party and the other party too. Both parties need to be thinking about something. Unfortunately, one party's candidate is in the hospital. So, So Edie Rowe Willard, thank you so much, chair of the GOP. We appreciate you so much for the work that you're doing in the community and for coming on today on Coping with COVID. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've enjoyed it, Trey.
Absolutely. Take good care.
Join Palmetto Media Connections for the 2020 Virtual Media Social, Saturday, October 3rd from 3 until 5 p.m. This year's panelists include Curtis Wilson, Kara Gormley, Demetrius Brown, and Tre Tailor. Be a part of the virtual 2020 Media Social. Free registration at eventbrite.com. Presented by Palmetto Media Connections.
I'm Tre Tailor, and you're watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. One more news story of note that I wanted to mention is that tonight, the first debate between Lindsey Graham and, of course, Jamie Harrison is at 8 o'clock tonight. It's going to be held at Allen University. And there are several places that you can watch that on WIS, on their Facebook page, on WISTV.com, also on C-SPAN, also on WMVF, on Myrtle Beach, WCSC, and WTOC in the Charleston area. And finally, also you can watch the debate tonight on WYFF in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm Tre Tailor, and you are watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. And we are in the midst of a big election time. As I said, Matt Keisner calls it Vote-tober. And it is Vote-tober because we are starting to vote here in South Carolina, as I said to Edie on Monday. And today, Chris Whitmire with the South Carolina Elections Commission and Mr. Jim Felder with South Carolina Voter Education Project, join us today to talk about voting and voting rights and everything that you need to know and was afraid to ask. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to start with you, Chris, because I know that you have got to bounce out of here in a couple of minutes. Today is actually the last day to register to vote if folks want to vote in the November election. Is that correct?
That's right, with one exception, and that's very important. You know, in-person absentee voting starts tomorrow. A lot of people have applied for their absentee ballots, and those have been going out. But if you want to vote, you got to make sure you get registered first. So none of that matters unless you make sure you're registered. So tomorrow, Sunday, October 4th is the deadline. If you're going to register online, if you're going to email your application in, if you're going to fax it in, you got to get that done by midnight tomorrow night, Sunday night. And that's for people who've never registered. Maybe you've moved to the state. Maybe you've come of age, or you'll be 18 by election day, you can register. And also for people who may have moved from one county to another, that's another point, that you have to get registered in your new county by the deadline, something a lot of people don't know. So that's midnight tomorrow night. After midnight tomorrow night, the only option is to do registration by mail and get that postmarked by Monday, October 5th.
All right. So what do people, do they need to go to scvotes.org? I've got some information here. Is this what they need to do? Go to scvotes.org, Chris?
Yes. Yes. scvotes.org works. We actually changed our website to scvotes.gov, but if you go to .org, it's going to take you right over to .gov. So if you hear me say .gov, that's what it currently is. It's okay. You can punch in .org. It takes you straight there. We still own that site too. But yeah, go to scvotes.gov and click on online voter registration. It'll take you to a page that'll also tell you about all your options, and including a link to the online voter registration site. And online voter registration is available if you have a driver's license or a DMV ID. If you don't have one of those, you need to print out one of the mail-in forms, and you can sign that. You can scan it and email it in. You can fax it in. And if you need to mail it in, you can do that on Monday by getting it postmarked.
Okay, so they do technically have until Monday.
Until Monday, but on Monday, your options are going to be limited to only getting that postmarked by the U.S. Postal Service.
Okay, all right. And this is if you want to register to vote.
Yes.
Okay. But as you said, you suggest that people go to scvotes.gov so they can make sure their voter registration is up to date, they're registered in the right county, any other thing that they need to make sure of.
Yes, so important. Even if you think everything's okay, go to scvotes.gov, click check my voter registration. You can put in a little information about yourself, check your registration, make sure everything's in order, your address is up to date. And if it's not, you still have time. And, I mentioned about moving from one county to another. You do have to get registered by the deadline if you do that. But if you've moved within your county, just to let everybody know, you can update that address at any time, even up to election day, but you want to go ahead and get that done. But if it's a simple address change within the county, the deadline isn't so important, but I want to encourage you to do that as soon as possible.
Right. I want to say hi to Marvell Williams Mendenhall. Thank you so much for watching. She says, y'all better get out and vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Yeah, we've been hearing that a lot. Tamika also says tomorrow, brothers and sisters improving communities will register people to vote at Charlie W. Johnson Stadium from 12 until 4. The Black Voters Matter bus will be in town as part of its South Carolina tour. So that's great. That's great. Thank you, Tamika, for that information. Michelle Keir says she's registered. Great. That's great. We got to get out there and not only be registered, but also make sure others are registered. Mr. Felder, I want to get you in this conversation because, we hear a lot of people saying that this is arguably one of the most important election cycles of the last 20 years, maybe. And you've been around for several election cycles, as you are a living legend. Tell me, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, yes, I've been around 50 years doing voter registration. So I've been around a little bit. Now, this is an important election because we're talking about voting for candidates from the top to the bottom, president to school board members.
Right.
And in South Carolina, we've got a very special election going on, as I put it. You've got Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison really duking it out. I have not seen an election for a U.S. Senate seat this close in my time. So that's an important election. But don't forget the down ballots. That is school board members, House of Representative members, South Carolina Senate members. So you go, and city council members in some cities, and county council members. So it's a very important election at all levels. However, I am seeing more excitement this time than I have seen in a long time about people interested in voting and getting involved. All kind of organizations have been formed to do all kinds of things. So I think we're going to have the biggest turnout this election cycle since 2008, when we had a 76% turnout during Obama's first run. I think it's going to exceed that this time around. So it's very important. And we'll talk more about the logistics of it and what have you, but this is a very important election in spite of the virus. So we have to schedule things around that. Got to be safe, and there's some things that have been put into place to make that happen.
Well, I definitely want to talk about that, but you mentioned something that I want to bring Chris in with. Mr. Felder, you said that you think more people now are going to come out and vote than ever before. So, Chris, the last time we had a big election in South Carolina, there were a lot of problems at the polls. You know, we saw, I think people were out there till midnight trying to get in. We had problems with, and look, I don't have to tell you because I'm sure there are problems with not enough volunteers. There were problems with the machines. What has been put in place since then that will, delay or eliminate some of those issues from happening?
Yes, there were certainly some extreme issues in some polling places, particularly in Richland County, with some unacceptable wait times in the June primaries. And so the good news on that is that counties are telling us that for the most part, they have their polling places nailed down. They have plenty of volunteers, and that is
awesome.
An amazing story, I think, of this year, of this whole election year, is that when the coronavirus started spreading across the state back in the spring, and we were really worried about having enough poll managers for the June primaries.
Right. Because people were afraid. People were afraid to be exposed to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, that and many poll managers are of an age where they fall into high risk categories too. So we had people saying, I love being a poll manager. I want to serve. It's important to me, but it's not worth the risk to my health. And we totally understood that. So we had this issue. And so we did some things to start recruiting poll managers going back to late March and April. That continued through the primaries and after the primaries and runoffs into July and August. And we opened an online poll manager application on April 20th of this year. And since we started that, over 19,000 volunteers.
Wow, 19,000.
19,000. And that's about the same number that you need to conduct a presidential election, on top of all the people that were already serving. So thank you to everyone who did that. I mean, that's an amazing story of South Carolinians stepping up to do what they need to do to make sure our elections work.
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right. I heard over and over again, a lot of people saying that they were going to register. They were going to apply to be a poll worker. Even here, we ran the PSA and continue to run it, that there are poll workers that are needed. And I think enough people were impacted negatively to recognize that, and this is so good, that it is everyone's responsibility to make sure the voting process works. And the voting process absolutely has to do with voting, but it has to do with other things other than actually voting. It has to do with volunteering your time and your talents and your service.
It does. We have to have poll managers to have elections. And so everybody plays a part, whether you're volunteering to be a poll manager or not. And I say volunteer, you do get paid, but that's not why most people do it. They do it to serve their community and their county and their state and their country. But everybody plays a part. Even on the voter level, every voter has a responsibility to make sure they're registered, make sure their address is up to date, be knowledgeable about what you're voting for and the ballot content, the offices, and the candidates, and where your polling place is. So there's sort of a social responsibility that we have to maintain and manage our voter registration and then exercise it.
Right. Chris Whitmire is joined us. He's with the Richland County Elections Commission, and Mr. Jim Felder with the South Carolina Voter Education Project. And of course, as we are 30 days away from the election, and as we say, Vote-tober, we wanted to bring them on to kind of talk about what the particulars are and what people need to know. So it is Vote-tober because beginning, at least in South Carolina and North Carolina, they're already voting, but beginning Monday, people can actually vote. So what does that mean for folks? Either one of you.
Good, Chris, you got to leave. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give the details on what that is. So tomorrow, in-person absentee voting starts throughout the state. Of course,
Tomorrow or Monday?
I'm sorry. It's already Sunday for me.
That's okay.
You're right. It's not tomorrow.
I just want to make sure where people can go tomorrow. If they need
Hey, I'm moving things along. I'm ready to get to November 4th. So in-person absentee voting starts throughout the state on Monday,
Okay.
October 5th. And of course, everybody in the state can vote absentee. So that option's available to everyone. And another big story, of course, that happens at every county voter registration office. But another big story of this election is the number of extension offices that counties are opening to give more opportunities for in-person voting.
Well, Chris, before you do that, I just want to clarify something. So, because you said people can go ahead, anybody can do it now. I know that there was a back and forth at the State House about do you need it? So I guess that's mail-in. Does it need to be notarized? Doesn't it need to be notarized? Can you talk a little bit about that before we get to that? Because I just want to make sure where we are on it at this point.
Yeah, so in person, the notary issue has nothing to do with that. So if you go in person,
Okay, cool.
you're showing your ID, you're doing your application, you're voting like you do on election day, you're done. If you're voting absentee by mail, you need to get an application first, return that application. You'll be mailed a ballot. You vote the ballot with a pen, and you put your ballot into the secrecy envelopes called the ballot hearing envelope. And then you put that into the envelope you're going to use to mail it back. And that's a postage paid envelope, so no postage necessary. And on the back of it, there's a place for 2 signatures. One of those is the voter's oath. That's where you as the voter sign. There's no question about that. You have to sign that voter's oath. Everybody needs to make sure if they're voting absentee by mail that they do that, because if you don't, that ballot will not count. So you have to sign the voter's oath.
Okay.
The second thing is getting to the answer to your question is about the witness signature. And so right now, the witness signature is not required.
Okay.
It is an ongoing court case. There's been an appeal filed with the U.S. Supreme Court on this issue. And that's my son in the background. Sorry about that. Making a little appearance there. So
that's his second appearance because he went up the stairs too.
So an encore, yeah. You don't have to have that witness signature right now. It is an ongoing court case though. So my advice is, if it's not an issue for you, because it's really easy, it can be any other person. You mentioned a notary. It does not have to be a notary.
Oh, okay.
The person doesn't have to be 18.
Just a witness.
They don't have to even be a registered voter. It can literally be any other person to sign under your name and put their address. So if anybody in your house, if you have somebody that's there with you, go ahead and do the witness. It doesn't hurt anything. But if you can't get a witness, maybe you're self-isolating, you have COVID, whatever the reason is that you can't, don't sign it. I mean, don't worry about the witness. Go ahead and vote. Send your ballot in. The law right now says that that's not required. Our motto is every vote matters, every vote counts, and our intention is to count every ballot that's cast legally under the law, and in that case, it would be legal.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to clear that up because I know it's been going back and forth and back and forth. And listen, who cares what I think? But if the person doesn't have to be a voter, if they don't have to be of age, if they don't have to be in South Carolina, why do they have to be at all? But I digress.
It's a good question.
Yeah. If it don't have to be any of those things, I mean, anyway, I'm not going to take up your last 15 seconds with that. But so you were saying the other thing is that there's more than one place to skin a cat, as they say. You can vote more than up the street at 2020 Hampton Street.
That's right.
That's
every voter now has basically 3 options to vote. You can go on election day. We're doing all of the things to do.
Go ahead, Chris. I was
Okay.
just
Okay, sorry. I see that what you did now. I thought maybe I lost connection.
No.
I
just
threw me off a little bit. Sorry. Everybody has 3 options to vote. You can vote at your polling place on election days. Like normal, we're taking all of the CDC recommended guidelines on making polling places as safe as possible for voters and poll managers. So social distancing, masks and gloves and hand sanitizer, cleaning surfaces, all of those things. So we're doing what we can. The same way with in-person voting, in-person absentee voting, which I believe is what the graphic was about, was the Richland County locations. I believe they have 6 additional locations.
Yes.
You can find those on our website at scvotes.gov. If you click on Contact My County Office, you can see those same locations. You can find them also on the Richland County Board of Voter Registration and Elections website as well. And then on our website, if you're in another county, you can see any additional locations in counties throughout the state. There's approximately 60 additional locations throughout the state. There's about 21 counties that are opening some location other than their voter registration office. And, my sort of what I tell people is if it's convenient to you, if you feel safe doing it, and we're taking all the precautions, this is the easiest way to do it because there's not all of the mailing. There's not the application going back and forth. There's not the mailing the ballot back and forth. You just go down during a 30-day period, goes until 5 o'clock on November 2nd, but I encourage you to go as early as possible. And and there's going to be some weekend hours. There'll be some after hours, after business hours, locations and times in some locations. So at your convenience, you can go anytime in the next month and vote in person. And then absentee by mail, some people need to do that, and it's certainly an option for everyone. People are taking advantage of it in record numbers. We've received over 350,000 applications
Wow.
for absentee by mail. That's that the previous record was 140,000. We're at over 350,000 now. First step to do that, get your application. You can print it at scvotes.gov. You need a printer. If you don't have internet access or a printer, you can call your county voter registration office. They'll mail you an application. The takeaway on that is that if you need to vote absentee by mail, you need to act now. Leave yourself plenty of time to get everything back in time, get your ballot back in time. The deadline to apply is October 24th.
Okay. All right. We've got a question for you, Chris, before you leave. But Edie says that she believes both the Republican and Democratic parties are willing to help provide a witness signature if necessary. So if you need a witness signature, if it ends up being that today or next week or whenever, as Edie said, both parties are willing to help you find someone to sign if all you have is your dog at the house. So listen, Tanya Haddon has a question. And you might be able to use your dog as it goes these days. Tanya wants to know, what if you don't get your absentee ballot in time? And then she says, I guess since you started talking, she says, so you don't have to wait for it to come in the mail.
So if you've already applied for an absentee ballot, that ballot by this time is on its way. And so I know a lot of people in Richland County haven't received their ballot yet, and that's because I believe those are actually going out on Monday. So if you haven't received it yet, don't be too concerned about it because it's on its way. But once you've applied and you're set to receive that ballot, you really need to wait on it to come. And at that point, what I would do is vote it and either mail it back or return it in person. You can actually take it down in person to the voter registration office or to one of these extension offices. But if for some reason you decide, well, you know what, I really don't want to vote this method, you're going to have to take that ballot and return it anyway.
Okay, I was going to ask that. So if you get if you've applied for an absentee ballot and you get it, you've got to mail it in. If you decide I'm going to go ahead and do it in person, you have to do what?
You have to return that ballot to the voter registration office, and then you could either vote absentee in person there, or they'll authorize you to go and vote at you would then be authorized to go and vote at your polling place on election day. Now, another question she's asking in there, I believe, is it's close to election day, and I never got my ballot.
Right.
And in that case, preferably you would contact the county voter registration office before election day and say, hey, I know my ballot was on the way. I've never received it. I'm going to need to vote at my polling place, and they can take care of it for you. But even on election day, if you never got your ballot, you can go to your polling place, let them know that you never received your ballot. The only thing about that is you're going to have to vote a provisional ballot that goes into an envelope. The county voter registration board will have to decide whether to count it. And the only thing that would keep that from counting is if you actually had returned to the absentee by mail ballot. So it's always best to avoid a provisional ballot if you can. So if it's late, a few days before the election, you haven't received your ballot, call the voter registration office and say, look, I haven't gotten my ballot. I want to vote on election day, and they'll take care of it.
All right. Thank you, Tanya, for your question. So, Chris, it's 35. Do we have you a couple of more? What? Tell me what the deal is.
I can go a few more minutes here. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Tamika wants to ask, and thank you, Tanya, for your question. Tamika says, before I get to Tamika's question, and Tanya has a follow-up question. So she says, okay, so I can do provisional ballot. Can I do that out of state? That's the reason for her voting absentee ballots, because she won't be here on election day.
So in that case, if you were out of state and you didn't get your ballot, there's not a lot of options for you, unless it's to come back to South Carolina. So that's why it's so important to apply now. Don't wait. So if you're out of state, you need to have your application in right now, so you get your ballot sent out with this first big batch, and you leave yourself plenty of time to get your ballot in.
Yeah. Okay, Tanya. So go ahead and get it. And but again, and you are saying because she's from Richland County, Chris, she should get. You said that those are getting ready to be mailed out this coming week, correct?
Yeah, and my understanding is those go out on Monday.
Those go out on Monday. So if she doesn't get it by what date? What date should people start being concerned and picking up the phone if they don't get it by?
I would say if you have your application in right now and it's been in, and you don't get a ballot by the end of next week, then you want to look into it. And I think what everybody needs to know is that you can go to scvotes.gov and click check my absentee ballot, and you can see the date that your application was issued. You can see the date your application was returned, so the date that you applied, and then the date your ballot was mailed. And then once you mail your ballot back, you can see the date it was received through the website. So that's there to provide you some information about where we stand. And so you can go and look on Monday and say, okay, was my ballot mailed today? And check it on Tuesday, Wednesday, see the actual date it went out. Give it a few days, depending on where you're located. I think Postal Service is usually 2 days, within the state. Depends on where you're at out of state, how long it might take to reach you. But the individual person is probably more familiar with how long it takes mail to receive them to wherever they're located. So
right. So pretty much, if people have any questions, need clarification, they can go to that scvotes.gov.
scvotes.gov. You can check your registration. You can register to vote. You can get an absentee application. You got to print that out, though. You can check your absentee ballot. You can get your sample ballot. I'm probably leaving something out. There's a lot you can do there. It's right on the front page, all of these services that voters can take advantage of.
All right, all right. So we're talking to Chris Whitmire. He is with the Richland County Elections Commission, and Mr. Jim Felder is with SC Voter
Trey,
Education.
Straight,
Yes, sir.
he's with the State Election Commission.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
yep.
He kept letting me say the wrong thing the whole time.
You
Right?
did.
Thank you,
He's
Mr.
the big
Felder.
boss of registration.
Okay, all right. He is the big boss, as Mr. Felder said.
I talked a lot about Richland, though, so I
Yeah.
can understand the confusion.
Yeah, he's with the state South Carolina Elections Commission, and Mr. Jim Felder, among other things, today for this purpose. Today, he is with the South Carolina Voter Education Project. So we talked about a lot of things. I know Tamika had a question about provisions against voter intimidation. Are there any provisions being made? Either one of you gentlemen want to talk about that for voter intimidation at the polls?
I can address it from our perspective, and that's that, any sort of thing that could be considered intimidation at the polls is against the law. It's illegal. Poll managers are trained to recognize that and to remove anybody from the polling place who is doing anything that's intimidating voters. And, law enforcement is charged with answering poll managers' calls to end any activity that would be considered intimidating. So it's something that we look out for. And would look to address immediately. And so, I'll say this, and I'll let you talk, Mr. Felder. But I think the most important thing about this topic is that it's important, if you see this on election day, to say something while it's happening, because
Right.
so many times I get that call the day after the election. Well, this was going on at a polling place. I'm like, what are we going to do today?
Yeah.
The voting's over at 7 p.m. You should have
Right.
called us or called somebody while this was happening. So I'll leave it with that.
Yeah. Mr. Felder?
What happens there, Trey? Yes, what happens is law enforcement are available. You won't see them hanging around the polling places, because that tends to deter some people from coming. If they see a lot of policemen, you won't see that, but they are standing by ready for a call if there's any problems at that polling place. And all you need to do is report to the poll manager. They immediately call the sheriff's office of the city of Columbia, and they will come out and take care of the matter. So you won't have that. The other thing is you can't campaign within certain feet from the polling places. So you can't have people standing in the doorway handing you a sample ballot of their own as you're going in to vote. So all those things are in place. They're in place. I wouldn't fret that, not in South Carolina or Columbia anyway.
Yeah. So what about if people have transportation issues? I know, Mr. Felder, you can probably speak to this. What can people do? I want to talk about transportation and handicap and elderly.
Okay. There are several numbers you can call. First of all, NAACP is putting together a pool of transportation to get those persons to the polls. Blue Ribbon Cab Company through the years has provided free rides to the polls, and numerous organizations that have been formed here recently also are providing transportation for those who may need it. So a simple phone call to the NAACP office or my office, a ride will be available. So that should not be an issue for anybody. However,
what's
early.
your number, Mr. Felder? What's the number at your office?
All right, 803-261-0167.
Okay.
There's another number, I don't have it now, but it'll roll over, but you can reach us that number.
Okay. Now, what about concessions for handicap and elderly?
Well, Chris, you know what that
Sure.
situation is. All right. Talk to them about taking the machine out to the car for persons who cannot come into the voting place.
Sure. People with disabilities who have an issue entering the polling place or even standing in line for long periods of time to vote do have the opportunity to vote curbside voting, and that's available at every polling place throughout the state. And basically how that works is there'll be a sign in one of the parking spaces very near the entrance to the building that says curbside voting. You pull up into that parking space. Poll managers are checking that regularly. They'll come out and serve you at the curb. They have to take your ID inside, and they'll come back out. They'll have you sign at the car, and they'll bring a ballot marking device out and let you vote outside at your car. But one thing I just want to tell her, this is only for people who are disabled, have some issue entering the polling place, have some issue standing in line to vote. What we saw in some places in June is why I bring this up is that because of COVID, some voters saw people voting at the curb, right, in their car, and they go, wow, that's convenient. I think I'll get in this. I think I'll get in that line. I want to do that, when they really, weren't really qualified to do that. And
Right.
And that the biggest issue with that is that it gets in the way of the people who really need it, right? So I would just encourage everybody, if you have no issue going in the polling place, if you have no issue standing in line, that's what you need to do. This is for people the people who need it.
Right. Edie, who's obviously still watching the show, she says the Richland County Library has a list of organizations to help with transportation on Election Day as well. So great. Right. Thank you so much, Edie. Thank you so much for that information. So now what do people have to do? Whoever the person is that's driving, the elderly person, handicapped person, they need to go in and say, I've got somebody out there, that kind of thing, right?
That's helpful if somebody's driving you, to that person to go in and let them know. But they should be monitoring the space. So even if you drove yourself and you can drive yourself just fine, but it's just you have some issue.
Can't get around.
Can't stand in line long periods of time. If you just pull up into that space, they're going to come out and help.
Okay. Now, what about masks? Are masks required to go into the polling place?
Masks are strongly encouraged. Personally encourage you to wear a mask. Our poll managers are going to be wearing a mask. They're doing that to protect the voters and the fellow poll managers, and we ask voters to do the same. But to answer your question directly, no, it's not a legal requirement. We can't require a person to wear a mask as a prerequisite to vote. But I would just ask that everybody going to the polls do what we need to do as South Carolinians to protect each other.
Right. Tanya said
that if you don't have a mask, they have them there for you.
Okay. Right. So it's not mandatory, but it is strongly suggested.
Correct.
Yes. Tanya Haddon says last time she voted that there was a number posted outside of the polling place to call if you needed someone to come out. Thank you, Tanya, for that information. So, Mr. Felder, what else do people need to know this time? What is different this time that people really need to be made aware of?
Sample ballot. I'm really stressing that everybody pull his or her sample ballot off of the website prior to going to the polls. This year, candidates have not had an opportunity to do the normal kind of campaigning and reaching out to people. So the average citizen does not know who all those candidates are on the ballot. So the quickest way to do that is go to scvotes.gov, pull off, it'll say my sample ballot, click on it. They only ask for your date of birth, your name and your date of birth, and you can pull your sample ballot off. Look at the candidates, study them. If you don't know who they are, call your neighbors, call somebody else, find out who these people are on this ballot. Prepare your sample ballot and then take it into the polls with you. Transfer that information to the official ballot. Less likely that you'll have a problem with your ballot getting tossed out for voting for too many candidates. Now, you can vote for less than the number, but you can't exceed the number of persons who are running for that particular office. For example, Richland County School Board, you've got 6 people running.
Right.
But you can only vote for 2.
2, right.
You can only vote for 2. Now, if you vote for 3, your ballot is invalid.
But Mr. Felder,
if you vote for 1, okay, but you can't vote for more than the number of that who can be elected. Yes.
Right. But Mr. Felder, will the machine allow you to vote for more than 2? Won't it flag you right there if you try to hit another person's name?
Personally, I don't think it does it?
No, it does. It does. So the ballot marking device will not let you overvote, but it is possible on a hand marked ballot. So when you're voting absentee by mail, you're voting a provisional ballot at the polling place. If for some reason you have to vote an emergency ballot, these are all hand marked types of ballots. And Mr. Felder is exactly right. You got to pay close attention to the number of candidates you can vote for. You don't want to, if it's a vote for 2, like that school board race, make sure you vote for 2, or you can vote for 1 if you want to. You can vote for 0 if you want, but no more than 2. And if you vote for more than 2, it doesn't throw out your whole ballot, but it's your vote. None of your votes for that office are going to count.
Right.
And that's what I was going to ask.
It's impossible to tell which 2 you wanted to vote for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If you overvote, does that knock out everything that you voted for in that category, or your entire ballot?
Just for that
category.
Okay.
Just for that office. Yeah.
Okay. And that could only happen, per what you were saying, Chris, is during the mail-in voting, because that is actually a write-in kind of situation.
Yeah, it's a hand-marked ballot, so you could bubble in as many ovals fill in as many ovals as you want. And I would add this to the sample ballot discussion, is that there is an added benefit to it, not just knowing your candidates and being able to know how you're going to vote before Election Day, but the other benefit is that it helps you move through the process faster on Election Day, which is a COVID benefit. So if you know how you're going to vote, you're just going in and, like Mr. Felder said, transferring what you've already decided onto your ballot.
Yeah.
Helps you move through the process, get out of there, and the less time that you're in the polling place with other people, the less time you're exposed to other people and the risks of COVID.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mr. Felder and Chris. Go ahead, as you said, Mr. Felder, go ahead and look at that sample ballot so you have a heads up and you'll know what you're doing. Regina Williams is watching. Thank you, Regina. She says they'll vote for 3 if they live in Jamie or Cheryl's district. They'll vote for 3 candidates if they live in for school board. She's talking about for school board. Thank you, Regina, for that information. What else, Mr. Felder? You were giving us some things that we really need to be made aware of this time, something that's different or something people need to look out for. So the first thing was make sure you look at that sample ballot so you know what you're doing before you do it.
And the other thing is voter ID. You've got to have some form of voter ID. What I'm suggesting to people, those persons who have not taken advantage of having their picture put on their voter registration card, to go ahead and do it. Now, you have to do that at 2020 Hampton Street. But once you do that, now for the rest of your life, you've got a voter ID. So I urge you to do that also. It only takes 10 minutes or so. They take your picture, print out your new card. It's a plastic card, and you're ready to go. And that eliminates persons who don't have a driver's license or military or passport. But you have the official voter ID, your picture on your official voter registration card. That's the other thing I would urge them to do. Yes.
So that's a great point. So you're saying now that, because I don't have that, I have to show my driver's license and my little paper voter registration card. Yeah. So you're saying now you can actually get a plastic one that has your picture on it, and that will suffice when you are.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, am I? Okay.
That's right. I can pick up with that. That's right. You can. So to vote, you have to have a driver's license, a DMV ID card, a passport, a military ID, or a photo voter registration card. And you can go down to your county voter registration office. You don't have to take any paperwork with you. As long as you're registered, you can identify yourself verbally by providing your name, date of birth, social security number. They'll look you up, verify that information in the system, take your picture, issue you a photo voter registration card. They'll hand you a paper one that you can use immediately, and then you'll get a hard plastic one in the mail in a few days. And that's all you need to vote. I know, Trey, you mentioned taking your voter registration card. If you have one of those photo IDs, you don't really even need your voter registration card, although that's awesome that you have it. And that's always important to have to know, that you're registered in all your districts and everything else.
Yeah, that's good to know. So, Chris, you said people will get it in a couple of days. Do you really think, and I'm just asking, do you really think they'll get it with everything else you guys are trying to mail out?
So
these 300,000 absentee ballots that have been requested?
Very astute of you. As I was saying that, I was thinking, hey, is it going to be just a couple of days?
Yeah.
In some days you will receive a card, but you'll have that one in your hand that even if it took a week or whatever to get it, you've got the one that you can use immediately. And it's just made out of paper, so it doesn't expire or anything. It's just less durable, but you'll get kind of a permanent durable card in the mail.
Right. Well, Chris, you have stayed way past your 30 minutes, so I really appreciate it. And we've only got 2 more minutes left in the show, so you might as well sit right there.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
So, Mr. Felder, I do want to say
Trey,
yes, sir.
You mentioned, I think Chris mentioned about registering in South Carolina. It's permanent registration. Once you register, you are on the books permanently. You may go into a situation where if you haven't voted in 2 general elections, you may be put on the inactive voter registration rolls. But once in South Carolina, once you register to vote, you register permanently. Unless you commit an offense against the laws of the state, then you lose your right to vote. But once you've completed your sentence and paid your fines and all of that, now you can go back and re-register, and you're now a full citizen again. So that's the other piece that is lost out there to so many of our young men and women who go into the criminal justice system and they get out, they think they can't participate anymore. But once they've done everything the judge ordered them to do, they can now re-register and be back on the rolls again.
That's a great point.
That is a great point.
Important to know today, because if you've been convicted of a felony, you lose your right to vote, you're taken off the list and everything, but you do have to re-register. And so as long as you've completed your parole and probation, you're done with that sentence, you can register to vote. So if you fall in that category right now, you can go to scvotes.gov, click on online voter registration. If you have a driver's license or DMV ID, it only takes a few minutes.
All right. Regina said that there are 2 at-large and 1 district seat that equals the 3 votes. That's what she was saying, the 3 votes if you're in Jamie or Cheryl's district. Thank you again, Regina. All right. So Chris Whitmire with the State of South Carolina Election Commission, Mr. Jim Felder, SC Voter Project. Thank you both so much for joining us today on Coping with COVID. Just a wealth of information. It certainly is an important election, as you said, Mr. Felder, both locally and nationally. And a lot of great things going on, a lot of interest in this particular election, a lot of advocacy going on, and a lot of opportunities to get involved. And as you say, Chris, people are volunteerism, paid volunteerism anyway, is at their all-time high. So I know that's exciting. It's an exciting time right now, I think. And it's so important to be participate in the process. So anything else that you guys want to add as we wrap up this segment?
Yeah, the interest in this election is through the roof. Record-breaking volunteerism with poll managers, record-breaking people voting absentee, record-breaking voter registration, and back to Mr. Felder's point earlier in the program, presidential elections set turnout records, and the record for presidential election was 76% set in 2008. It'll be interesting to see if we break that. It certainly has a feel of a record-breaking election. Yeah.
Mr. Felder?
Trey, I'd just like to say ditto to what Chris just said. This kind of excitement I've not seen in 50 years. So This is going to be quite an interesting year. Election.
Wow. And
thank you for all you do. Yes.
Oh, yes, sir. It ain't over yet. We got 30 more days. And look, there's no telling what's going to happen in these next 30 days. Look at what's happened the last 8 months.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Jim Felder, Chris Whitmire, thank you, gentlemen, both so much. And Chris, thank you so much for staying longer than you. You can tell your son that y'all can go and go do what you were getting ready to do.
Yeah, I'm going to go untie the kids now. So I'm not going to closet I appreciate the opportunity. There's a lot of questions that people have, and
there
are answers for.
Yeah. So thank you all so much. Again, if you have an opportunity to come back on before the election, I would love to have you back on. I'll get with your booking agent, Michelle.
That's my old cohort from years ago. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much again. Chris Whitmire, Jim Felder, thank you guys so much again for joining us today on Coping with COVID. Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you. All right. So again, go to scvotes.gov if you want more information about voter rights, voter education, anything. If you want to look at a sample ballot, as Mr. Felder said, if you want to check your voter registration, if you've applied for an absentee ballot and you want to check on that, please go to scvotes.gov. Now, if you have a story that could help someone cope with COVID, please go to the Tailor Made Productions page on Facebook and inbox me, and I would love to talk to you about getting your story on Coping with COVID. If you have a product or service that could help someone cope with COVID, please email copingwith tretailor@gmail.com. There's the information right there. And we would love to talk to you about being a proud sponsor of Coping with COVID, just like the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, SCDHAC, Agape Counseling and Training Center, and Palmetto Media Connections. Now, coming up Monday, Fun Day Monday, or with George Wallace and comedian Nick Lewis. And then Tuesday, we'll talk to South Carolina native guitarist Sheldon Ferguson. He's going to share his story of success while pursuing his music career. And then Wednesday, In It Together and the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina present Wellness Wednesday. We're going to talk about clinical trials and why it's important for African Americans to participate. New York, Dr. Alexia Gaffney and Mary Wilson with USC are going to join us for that. That's coming up on Coping with COVID. As always, I leave you with a reading from Jesus Calling. Today is October 3rd. And Jesus says, when so many things seem to be going wrong, trust me. When your life feels increasingly out of control, thank me. These are supernatural responses, and they can lift you above your circumstances. If you do what comes naturally in the face of difficulties, you may fall prey to negativism. Even a few complaints can set you on a path that is a downward spiral by darkening your perspective and mindset. With this attitude controlling you, complaints flow more and more readily from your mouth. Each one moves you steadily down the slippery spiral. The lower you go, the faster you slide. But it is possible for you to apply the brakes. Cry out to me in my name. Affirm your trust in me, regardless of how you feel, Jesus says. Thank me for everything, though this seems unnatural, even irrational. Gradually, you will begin to ascend, recovering your lost ground. When you are back on ground level, you can face your circumstances from a humble perspective. If you choose supernatural responses this time, trusting and thanking me, you will experience my unfathomable peace. That's your Jesus Calling for today, October 3rd. I'm Tre Tailor. Thank you so much for joining us. Until the next time, I wish you peace and abundant blessings. Have a great day.
Coping with COVID is brought to you by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. Visit scdheck.gov for an updated list of testing sites and important information on how to protect yourself, your family, and friends from the coronavirus. SCDHEC, healthy people, healthy communities. Also, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, helping to meet the needs of small, minority, and women-owned businesses in the City of Columbia. Log on to columbiasc.net/OBO. Agape Counseling and Training Center. Call 803-779-2777 for licensed professionals of counselors and social workers helping families, engaged and married couples, and individuals of all ages gain an understanding of all aspects of their life. If you're having a challenge coping with COVID, contact Agape Counseling and Training Center at agapects.com. And Columbia Housing Authority. The agency is looking for stories from former residents of Allen Benedict Court to retain some of the property's rich history. In its 80-year life, Allen Benedict Court has been home to some of the country's elite, including a Grammy Award-winning performer, corporate executives, national television celebrities, a host of doctors, lawyers, and NBA greats. So share your pictures, mementos, and memories at chcares@chasc.org. Coping with COVID, brought to you by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, Columbia Housing Authority, Agape Counseling and Training Center, and Palmetto Media Connection.
Coping with COVID with Tre Tailor.